from the Humongous, the Lord Humongous, the warrior of the wasteland, the Ayatollah of rock and roller!
I'm gravely disappointed. Again, you have made me unleash my dogs of war. Look at what remains of your gallant scouts. Why? Because you're selfish. You hoard your gasoline. You will not listen to reason. Now, my prisoners say, you plan to take your gasoline out of the wasteland. You sent them out this morning to find a vehicle. A rig big enough to hold that fat tank of gas. What a puny plan.
Hello, listening people.
Hello!
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
Bartek is doing very well. How is Ryan doing? That's you.
I don't know. It's hard to know how you're doing, really. I'm doing okay for now, but maybe in the next 5 seconds I'll be feeling happier.
Ryan had a really tough life after...
Nope, not feeling happier.
After,
I counted the seconds, it didn't get any happier.
After the petrol situation and the government people were talking, and then his family got killed, and then he became Leatherman.
Leatherman. Yes. The leather warrior. Alright, we are spit and polish likingly because we are always spitting, and we both happen to be Polish. Any Polish facts for us for this one? Anything Polish going on?
Wasn't Max's last name in the first film Polish?
Yep.
There you go, that's a good one. That was pretty good, yeah. Good fact.
I'm feeling happy now! Yeah. I'm feeling happy now with all these facts that Bartek dispenses.
Remember the Polish word, fucked?
Fucked? There you go.
Fucked is plural.
I'm feeling fucked there, alright. So, we're doing Pictures Powwow, the show where we discuss a movie that has come recommended. I recommended the movie, our cycle goes Bartek, then me, then you. That's right, you, the listening person, can recommend the film. Hit us up on the social media or the email. All of that is in the description below.
At the end of this episode, we're going to hear what the listening people selected.
Are we? I'm getting croakier.
Well, I'm gonna hear, the listening people are gonna hear, but you, Ryan, will be saying.
I will be saying I'm getting croakier because I'm getting ready for my Australian discussion of an Aussie classic.
We got to hear your bad Australian accent.
Yeah, that's it.
We got to put on our Australian accents.
We're gonna put on our Australian accents. You hone in on your romper stomper style accents, where you're from Footscray, and I'll hone in on my Crocodile Dundee accent, where he was from the Northern Territory, I do believe. He was somewhere up there.
Probably, mate.
Put another shrimp on the barbie. We don't do that, by the way. No Australian does that. That's a lie. We don't drink Foster's either. That's a lie too, that we spread to you. But we are talking about Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. The Road Warrior. We're revisiting the Mad Max franchise. Bartek, do you want to kind of go over your relationship with the Mad Max franchise for those who are not caught up?
Yes, so prior to literally the day of this recording, I had only ever seen the original Mad Max. I've seen it twice. Once when I was a teenager, and once for this podcast earlier the year that we're recording this. 2022, and I'd seen Fury Road in the cinema with my dad when I was visiting Poland last time or 2 times ago.
Any lector?
No. It was in English whenever they spoke.
Okay.
Yep.
2 times.
Yep. So I'd only seen the first one and the currently newest one, and now I have seen the second one, which is the big famous one. Well, I mean, the Fury Road's big famous, but
yeah,
this was the big one for the long time.
This was the best Mad Max movie. Like, what is Mad Max? This film was often heralded. What is a successful implementation of Mad Max? This was it. Forever.
When I saw the first Mad Max, I was familiar with some of the, tropes of the franchise, and I walked out of it kind of thinking, oh, that wasn't, what all those, pop culture things was like. But then at the end of this one, I'm like, oh, yep, that's Mad Max.
Now this is a Mad Max. You call that a knife? This is a knife. See, we're going back to Crocodile Dundee. That will be
No.
the next episode. Probably no, not really. No, one's
it'll be your
recommended it.
next recommendation.
To make it Aussie, for sure. Yeah, Mad Max, I've grown up with these films. I've always enjoyed them. Mad Max 2 was always the standout for me, as it is for many people. It is thrilling, it's funny, it has great action, it is not afraid to be brutal and nihilistic at points, and yeah, it is George Miller getting to do what he wanted to do. You can clearly tell when you watch the Mad Max movies in order of their release that this is the one where it's like, this is what he wanted to make. First Mad Max is him trying to figure it out. It's like his first feature film. He's doing all of this. He's it's a ragtag effort, and you're doing a little character story, but it's really about that world. It's about this desolate world with these bandits and people on the road with their absurd cars and their outfits and just everybody looking out for themselves. And can you break past that mentality? And this is the best version of that for the longest time. Obviously, Fury Road exists now, and we will obviously talk about the Fury Road in relation to this some point in this discussion, because a large part of looking at Road Warrior now is just seeing that Fury Road was George Miller just saying, I could do it better now. Like, I could do the Road Warrior, but better. Like, bigger and better.
Yeah.
Like, can I do the last 15 minutes of the movie for the whole runtime of the movie? And can I strip back on the dialogue even more for Max, where he says less and less and less? And there are some visual things from this that you see transfer over to future films, and like in Beyond Thunderdome and Fury Road, like for instance, the guys tied up to the front of the car on Humongous's car. You obviously have that. That's what Max is all happening to him in Fury Road to begin with, where he's chained to the front of the car with a big mask, and they're draining his blood. And it's an expansion of this idea, which was small here. It was a small but memorable visual, and it becomes a big point of visuals and story mechanics in that film. But Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, if you have not seen this film, well, watch it. It's kind of hard to say spoilers because the story is very simple, but you don't want to get spoiled on what the atmosphere is like. It's kind of hard to even describe it. It's like you have to watch it for yourself to get embroiled in what this is giving up. And if you've only seen, say, Fury Road or, like Bartek, the first Mad Max film, this definitely takes a step in a far different direction than either of those films do in terms of tone and atmosphere.
Yeah, this isn't one of the ones where we're going to begin our discussion saying, oh, please make sure you watch the movie first because we don't want you to get spoiled on it like we would have with, pardon me, Bad Genius, for example.
Right.
This is one where if someone gave you a full outline of the plot and the twists and everything like that, you know, there's still just the execution is the experience.
Right. So, Bartek, talk to me. What was your experience watching this film?
Yeah, I had a decent time with it. I can't remember if I talked about it in the first Mad Max discussion that we did. Never really been too into, you know, this type of post-apocalyptic storytelling, you know, the whole, you know, punk aesthetic mixed with post-apocalyptic. Never been too crazy about that, and even, you know, watching this film now, it very much was okay, this is where all that came from kind of experience. But yeah, the storytelling of this one was quite gripping. I really enjoyed the sort of, I know it's very loose, it's literally the beginning and end of the film, but like the framing device of like the very deep, nice sounding voice, like, you know, telling us who this Max character is, this understanding that some outside force has of Max. And then throughout the film we see like, oh, this is literally what Max goes through, and then the narration at the very end gives it a very, he describes it as like the legend of the Road Warrior, and even though, we were seeing the literal events of what this legend was doing in the film, it did give it this, like, ooh, sort of surreal quality.
Folks, like a folk tale.
Yeah.
Almost a fairy tale-esque thing, which the third film leans into a lot. Let's just leave it there. Let's just leave it at that.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, the narration frames it very well. It gives context to things, where in the first Mad Max, there was a lot of subtextual things going on. Society was dying. It was on the decline, and people were turning to violence far more. And then this one gives you all of the exposition up front, where it's like, ran out of oil, people were already becoming shitty at each other, war was on the brink, and we just kept indulging and embracing our worst traits, and here we are today.
I was happy with that, especially since it actually showed footage from Mad Max 1 and actually talked about it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So even though Mad Max 1, seems like not everyone is too big on it.
Mm-hmm. Not everyone's seen it.
Not everyone's seen it, especially if you're American. That seems to be doubly so. So it's still giving it a sense of presence in the film by showing some footage from it, and also giving us a basic idea of what happened in it.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was surrounded by all this new information, like I remember for the longest time, having only seen the first and last film, talking to you, you knew more about it because you've seen the whole franchise. You were telling me like what the actual event that created this world was, and I was like, oh, so that's what it was. And then this film just outright tells me at the beginning, so it's like, okay, so it's not so big a secret. For most people, it's the first thing they learn when they watch the film.
Right.
Or the franchise.
What did you think about, since we're talking about the narration as that framing device, what did you think about the reveal of who was the narrator all along? Did you guess that? Did you figure that out? Or was that a piece of information that was delivered to you at the end that came as a genuine little surprise?
To be honest, it wasn't really a huge factor in my enjoyment of the film because, again, the narration was at the very beginning of the film.
And very end, yeah.
And then very end, so I almost forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even really expecting that the film was going to end on the narration, but I guess in retrospect, it's interesting. Especially that whole last line of like, that was the last I ever saw of him.
Mm-hmm.
That kind
as
of thing.
As he fades into the distance.
Yeah, so if I were to ever rewatch this film, listening to that narration, knowing that this is from the perspective of someone who actually met Mad Max and actually had a, I'll use the word intimate experience with him. Like, he was with Max for a lot of the climax. Throughout the film, they had some sort of relationship going on.
And to add to that fairy tale or folk tale type legend of Max, this is a story from the viewpoint of a child. A child is like this character is the feral kid, and this retelling is from that feral kid who's all grown up. And this is him reflecting back on this weird little incident he had as a kid, and he's blowing it up to be this far more magnificent thing than what it really is, because that's what I love about the Mad Max world, is Max himself is very blunt and straightforward, and everybody attaches kind of like, or projects onto him like sentimental idealisms onto him, and he's just like, I'm just here for the gas. I do not have any care about any of this. Like,
yeah,
like,
that's what I meant by like, we get the flowery narration at the beginning and end, but then the middle of the film is very literal.
Yeah.
It's like, this is just a guy doing a thing, but the way that the narration is delivered really does give it a sort of like, ooh, mystical quality to it, fairy tale quality, as you were saying.
But that's every character around Max. Like, the bad guys think of Max as far more like big than he is, and then the guys, the good guys mining the gas, think far more fondly of him than any reasonable person should. I mean, and this is why it's like there's this element of having the narration at the beginning and an end where it's told by this, the little kid who is here for it, idealizing him and kind of propping him up more than what we actually see in the movie, where what we see in the movie is just a dude who's selfish, and then he slightly isn't anymore, but even then he's not that selfless at the end either. He's still a loner. He's just like, oh, I've lost my dog. I'm alone now with just my car. Not even my car. My car's gone
yeah,
too.
But even when he does do things, for the benefit of others, like the leader of the, what are they called? The people in the settlement?
Yeah, I can't remember.
The leader of the settlement, even after he's given Max the whole, like, oh, you're a loner guy thing, he does tell someone, well, he's honorable. He followed through on the contract. So,
yeah.
Max isn't really cheating people out of it.
No.
There is, you can make a deal with this guy.
Yeah, but he doesn't have... Like, he has a minor code of honor. That's what makes him a great character. That's what makes him the cowboy or the samurai type character that he is, where he says very little. He's motivated through selfish means, but he does have a code of honor that makes sense to him. But people, that's what I love about this world, especially from this point on. You didn't get this as much in the first Mad Max, but from this point on more, you have everybody kind of projects something onto Max, but he isn't doing any of, like, he isn't these things fully. Like the bad guys think of him as like this big foe that they have to really take down, and yet Max did barely anything to these guys. Like the Mohawk guy, he hates Max. He fucking loathes him, and it's like, but he didn't kill your lover. The little kid did. But he's so angry at Max throughout this whole movie because he had his little tit for tat for him at the beginning, but like Max did nothing but drive his car.
Or whenever he was feeling upset, his eyes were always on Max. So I guess he's just
fixated.
Conditioning himself to like, oh, I'm pissed off when I look at Max.
Yeah, and a lot of that, like the leader sees so much in this guy who's just like, dude, I just want some gas. One of my favorite examples of this is, and that demonstrates Max's lack of humanity, because that's a big part of it. He lacks humanity, and then through the adventures he gains some more, and by the end, you question, did he gain any or did he lose any? Where's he at by the end? We can talk about it. But I love the scene where him and the gyro copter captain guy are looking at the car being shot down, and the lady and the guy being ripped out of the car, and them just raping her and attacking him, and they're just looking.
Yeah, they're basically looking at a variation of a scene from the first film.
They're looking at horror, and they are just looking at it, and they're not... Like, Max in particular isn't that emotionally torn up about it. It doesn't really affect him. He's just, like, waiting for the moment of, now I can go down there and get the gas. He goes down there, and it's just like, there's this naked woman. She's dead. He just walks past her, doesn't really acknowledge that's not important. Walks over, and the guy's like, oh, thank God you've come to save me. And he's like, I'm just here for the gasoline. That's all I'm here for. I'll make a deal with you, but that's what I'm here for. And it's just like... he needs to grow, because this is all he is. He is vermin. He is just living on instinct and just driving through life without any real purpose. He's no longer even Mad Max, like at the end of the first one where he was like mad and driven and kind of insane. Now he's just like apathetic Max, just deadened to the world.
He was a little bit of a smiley Max when he found the music box.
Yeah, he likes a little music. He was also a little smiley every time he had a good time with his dog. He loved his dog a lot. Who he loved so much he just called him Dog. You don't need to name him.
He loves Columbo.
He loves Columbo.
Well, loved Columbo.
We all love Columbo. So tell me more about your experience with Mad Max 2. You said that you aren't a huge lover of this type of post-apocalypse, but every time we've done it on the pod, you've seemed to enjoy it. You love Dead End Drive-In, which was this. I kept mentioning, it's just Mad Max. And you're like, I don't know about that. I'm like, oh, okay. You seem to enjoy them somewhat on the pod thus far.
I guess maybe it's that I don't really have a too big of a drive to go see them, but maybe when I do watch them, like, I have a good time.
Pun intended. You had no drive to go see them.
That's a good one.
Vroom, vroom, baby.
It was unintended, but let's go with intended. I do remember when I finished watching Fury Road with my dad, my dad didn't like it. Oh. And I had good things to say about it, but it was more so on, like, objective technical aspects. I'm like, oh, that was a good one. Yeah, it's very clear that a lot of work goes into these films, a lot of costuming, finding locations that are appropriate for the films,
cars,
the vehicles, the fashion to them. It is definitely a visual spectacle just seeing things, all come together, and especially in this scene, this movie, with all the long shots of like when they're up on the hill looking down, and there's just like huge scene happening here. You can't really get a close look at everything, but there's a lot of stuff going on. It does feel very, almost dangerous. It almost, this might be a bit more relevant for you since you're playing like Metal Gear Solid right now, but like when you're scoping out a place that you have to sneak through and you're just like, okay, well, how are we going to do this thing? Like I was getting vibes like that when we first saw that settlement with the bus, as the gate, and just looking around, and then you're following the car go over to find the people. Yeah, it's a lot of really good locations and, I guess, blocking going on, I'm saying.
And we know another aspect too to appreciate, to really hammer in on, that is something that people don't associate as being difficult as much, which is lack of dialogue. To construct a movie with this much of sparse dialogue and yet still have it be a coherent story, there's enough dialogue for you to understand who the people are and what the stakes are. But he's indulging and exploring what it is like to tell this type of story, this post-apocalyptic thing, the fairy folktale thing, and this character study, with lacking dialogue, with just visuals, with the long shots, relying on the actors' physicality and the audience's intelligence to pick up subtleties, rather than just having dialogue just explain it all. Another highlight for me that I have a dark sense of humor, as do you, so some things that are funny to me aren't necessarily funny to other people, but a moment that brings me laughter because it's just like perfectly encapsulates the Mad Max universe is when Humongous is stringing up the guys that they've captured and they're setting them on fire in the distance at night, and they're screaming, and all of the settlers, all of them are looking on in horror, and Max is just at his car eating dog food, and he just kind of looks over and he's like, yeah, and just keeps eating dog food, just like, yeah, look, that's happening over there. All right, and just keeps, because this is nothing new to him. Like, the horror doesn't matter anymore. The most, like, emotionally complex things that nibble at him is when people have goes at him for being, like, this emotionally vacant person. Like, when the leader jabs at him for, like, oh, you think you've suffered more than anybody else. You've lost a family, I've lost a family. He doesn't like that. He reacts with violence to that. But then the other being, another emotional high point for him is, when the tanker does crash and fall over and everybody leaves and he just sees that it's pouring out dirt and he's just like, he's just really confused. He's like, what? Like, okay, right. And that's kind of it. Like, everything else, that's another thing to appreciate too, is this is where you have a good actor and good director stepping in. You have a character that's very internal emotionally, and you could say emotionless, apathetic, and yet you have to still make them a compelling character, and that's how spaghetti westerns work so well. That's how people like Clint Eastwood work so well as actors, for instance, where you have the silent protagonist who's grizzled and they're cynical, and you have to make them people that you want to follow. And all the problems Mel Gibson has associated with him are all valid, but he was a charismatic on-screen presence. He's a good actor. I think he's a bad guy, but he is very talented at his job, and he has, 13 lines of dialogue, I think it's stated in the trivia in this, and yet you can't take your eyes off of the guy. He is that he is that enrapturing, playing a guy that you would never actually want to spend any time with. Max is this horrible guy that you wouldn't want to spend any time with, but boy does Mel Gibson capture that quality of these leads do, like your Clint Eastwoods, like your Kurt Russells, like your, so on and so forth, Glenn Fonda's, where it's like you don't need dialogue, you just have these actors and their body language and their face carries it all.
I have to say, for this one, it didn't even really feel like he had that few lines. Like, it felt like he Or maybe they just spaced them out really well, that it kind of felt like he was talking more frequently than he was. Like, I know that there was one trivia point saying, like, oh, the longest line he had was the one where he was calling the attention of everyone back to him. It's like, oh, if you want this done, I'm the guy to talk to. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, because the dialogue is spread out in the right places. It's because what he has to say is important, and even without the dialogue, you understand his dynamics to every other character he interacts with.
Yeah.
Him and the kid get on. They don't speak any real lines of dialogue to each other to enforce that. You just see it. You just go, yeah, he gives them the little music box, and there they are. They've got this camaraderie. They've got this bond that will last through the film. He also appreciates the kid's little boomerang. He likes the boomerang.
There was one moment where it was when he came back to the settlement and the lady was like, oh, I'm sorry about what I did before. I said before, I was wrong about you, and he had like no reaction. It's like, oh yeah, Max doesn't need that.
An aspect that I think makes it stand out from the other Max movies, including Fury Road. Fury Road's gorgeous to look at. Like, it's a piece of art. It's so colorful and vibrant and amazing action. But what I really like about Mad Max 2, out of all of the others, is the color palette of the film. Very desaturated, very dry, very dulled, but it still pops in that way.
Yeah.
And as Australians, we just naturally look at the environments he's in and just go, yeah, that's how it is. Yeah, I've seen that. Like, when he's just driving and you just see, like, dirt along the road, but then there's just, like, little patches of grass, and you're like, yeah. Every time I drive out somewhere, there's always that stretch of road somewhere when you're going between the city and the country, which is
more
it
rural
kind of
areas.
dies, and then there's just like, oh, there's some grass. The color of the dirt is very, very obviously striking, where you have that reddish dirt, but then in other places you have this really pale brown dirt, which is very, very like, this is home. This is what I see a lot when I'm driving about places.
It's like sunburnt dirt.
Yeah, sun-dried
dirt.
Sun-dried dirt. What did you think about the overall visuals of this? Because that is a huge appeal of this, is the visuals of the costumes and the cars and the landscapes and the hairstyles and the world, how it's presented visually. Because as we've said through our Mad Max discussions, George Miller is very much a visually driven director and storyteller. So what did you think of all of that?
Yeah, thinking back to Fury Road, like, I don't remember too many specific things about it, but I do remember that it had that really big, sandstorm scene where you could just barely see anything. And thinking back on that film had a lot of very veiled scenes, like a lot of scenes at night where they're driving around, scenes where like dirt's all around them. But this one, I'm thinking to all the scenes where like everything's really clear. Like that scene I was talking about before where you see the landscape. It really made it stand out when you saw all the cars driving. They were leaving like, clouds of dirt behind them, even in the climax scene. So yeah, the fact that everything is, kind of so clear in this film makes the colors pop, and it definitely, the landscapes are something I'm going to remember from this one majorly. And yeah, even like the mise-en-scene of like the settlement, like when you see it from a distance, like on top of that hill, it doesn't look all that big, but then once you're there, there's like, things happening everywhere.
Yeah, right.
And
the party was like, how can they keep these guys out of there? But then once you go to ground level, you're like, actually, this is pretty difficult to get into. To even strike further upon the visuals, I mean, you said it earlier, but when you finish the movie, you're like, yes, this is the Mad Max that you had in your, like, that pop culture has shoved into your head.
Yeah.
And for me, and I'm curious to hear for you, what is that? Like, what is that? For me, it was a visual thing of the costumes, where you have the leather jacket with the one arm off and the leg brace on, and you have the freaky, kinky bad guys with the arseless chaps and the hockey mask with the throbbing head, and like, basically what I'm saying is Borderlands wouldn't exist without.
Yeah, for me,
this, right?
It's definitely like the bad guys.
Well, yeah, it's the bad guys, but even like Max's look with that car. It's like that fucking beautiful car that gets destroyed in this movie, and it brings a tear to my eye every time. But like, you know, you have Max where he has like the little silvery blonde streak on the side of his head in this one. I like that. I like the leg brace, which is a nice bit of continuity. I brought this up in the first Mad Max where there's continuity with his injuries. So he got his leg fucked up in the previous movie. Now he has his big leg, like this big brace around his leg. I like one of my favorite little gags or little touches was when he had all of the barrels of gasoline for himself, and they're like, anything else we can do for you? And while he's about to answer that, a guy walks over and like greases his leg brace for him. I thought that was a nice little moment there. But you know, you have his outfit, which is from the first film, but obviously time has degraded it. So now his precious gloves, they're missing some fingers, they got holes in them. His leather jacket that we love so much from that first movie's just got one arm ripped off of it, and he just looks awesome. Like, Max himself just looks fucking great. But you're right, it's the bad guys. That visual aesthetic is just so striking. Why do you think that is? And does that still work for you now, considering how much pop culture is kind of taken from this?
I think what works about it is that they do look just absolutely crazy. You know, they've got the sort of BDSM kind of aesthetic going on. A lot of them do act like hoons. You know, all the chains, the things going on. They have this look to them, but then you still have moments where they do still seem human. You like separate it from, you know, like a stylized horror film where, oh man, these characters are completely inhuman. This is just a villain to be defeated. But in this film, you know, like when they're reacting to something and they're all like doing their own thing and they get into the mode of doing it, like them just running to their cars, you know, there is this real like human team level of coordination going on. It's like, oh, this is the situation we're in right now. We know exactly how to handle this. So there is like this weird sense of humanity or human nature that they have to them, even though they look so crazy and
they're
act
vile.
so crazy and they're vile.
Like when Max goes through their camp and it knocks a tent over and there's a guy just having sex. And it's like, oh.
It's like they have moments where like, oh, they don't have to play up the crazy, really.
One of the moments that you're talking about here that really leapt out at me was, what's his name? Wiz, the Mohawk one.
I think it was Wes.
We get a moment where it's just like, we cut to them in the camp and somebody's shaving his head for him. And I was like,
yeah, like shaving his head or like behind the ears or something.
Yeah, just so that his mohawk's looking nice. And I'm like, yeah. Or like when his lover dies, when his little twink dies, and he's just like, ah.
Yeah,
and Lord Humongous has to like squeeze him out to knock him out. He's like, we do it my way.
Yeah, these aren't like slasher movie villains where like they can teleport at convenience and like get around certain things. Like they have to deal with reality.
The funny thing is, Lord Humongous has obviously people would associate the Jason look with the hockey mask, right? People like look at.
Yeah.
But what I like about him is, even though he's like this weird, kinky, buff sex guy, like he's his little leather jock strap, and he's like buff, and he's got he's a freak. He's a little freak, but he's a big freak, I should say. What I like about him, though, is you have this world. To further lean into the folk tale type thing, you have this world where we have this, at this time, this novel, new, fresh take on a post-apocalyptic environment. Let's just appreciate that for a moment too. That Mad Max was really the trendsetter of like what we associate the post-apocalypse to be in this fashion. It really was the let's put a flag in the ground and make it what it is. But you have that with. Our bad guy's going to be this burnt, fucked up, weird BDSM sex guy with a hockey mask. And he's wearing just a leather jockstrap. And he's talking on the megaphone. But from a simple storytelling mechanism, Lord Humongous is what we've seen in many things. He is the barbarian at the wall of the castle, demanding to be let in. We've seen that so many times in old stories, in folk tales, in fairy tales, in children's storybooks, in historical accounts of. He's basically Ming the. You know, he could be like. in old films, like even like
It's
Ming the Merciless
like
is
the
an
general
example.
at the front of the army, kind of.
Yeah, like we've seen that in so many things, like the Hun, for example, a great one where you have in Mulan, you have the head of the Hun guy where he's like this big guy, and all he wants is just let me in, just let me in. Or you have everybody's favorite, Attila the Hun, and you just go on and on and on. There's so many things, but you spin it where you have it in the lens of the world of Mad Max, where it adds that extra wrinkle. It makes it new, it makes it fresh. But does he, as the villain, do anything really that different from any of those bad guys we've seen? Like, is he really that different from, say, Darth Vader was like, I'm the bad guy that's just like, let me get what I want.
Yeah, what you're basically saying is like the key components of him, other than like the general weird vibe you get from him, is he's eloquent, well-spoken, diplomatic, and in terms of violence, he has really good aim. And that's like the main things about him, but then you give him...
and don't disappoint him.
And don't disappoint him, but then you give him, the aesthetic, the mannerisms, and all these interesting weird things, and, he feels very unique, even though, as you say, these are established elements.
And this may be myself, but his big neck, like his neck brace thing that he has on, the hockey mask, and the way he physically holds himself, he comes across like a knight, like a man in armor, yet he's got nothing on.
Yeah.
And because of the big neck thing he has on and the hockey mask, the way he just has to move his head about really does remind me of like the Dark Knight, the Black Knight at the gates that is just, let me in, and they're not going to. And he's very angry that they're not going to.
Even though, he's got like these modern elements on him, it's very clear that the vibe he's going for is old-fashioned, yeah.
So what did you think of him?
He was fun. It's one of those things also where, from this modern day, we always want to like go above and beyond about certain things. The new things have to be above and beyond. And I was almost expecting like him to be in it a bit more, hamming it up a bit more, having more one-on-one scenes with Max or something like that. But then with the execution of the film, I actually honestly didn't really notice when or / if he did die.
Yeah. He's an enigma because we don't get much about him either. We don't know where he came from, what his deal is. We just get visuals of like he's burnt, fucked up with throbbing hair, throbbing veins.
Yeah, the throbbing veins on the back. So.
Yeah, and like the strands of remaining hair on his head, and he has these eyes underneath that like really expressive, those eyes, and he's not Australian, he's got that accent going on, and obviously the actor, it was like, I think he's like some fucking European bodybuilder.
Yeah, it sounded like it had like a variation on a few accents going on.
Yeah, and you don't get too much about him, but he's in the movie enough, and what I like about him is he is very polite. He's like, please let me take the gasoline, I'll let you go. And there's that moment where they're like, you can't trust him, he's going to kill us all. And there are people like, no, I think we can trust him. He seems very nice. I'm like, yeah, he does seem very nice. Like, he will kill them, but like, I don't know. He's very well spoken.
He'll let Wes take his revenge, though. So
yeah. But he will chain him up like a dog when he acts naughty. You love that. I know that's one of your favorite type of things.
No, it's interesting for sure.
I really love with Humongous too. Again, to come back to the direction and visuals. It's shots that I remember more than even the character. Like the shot of him grabbing out his big long gun and aiming it upwards. Just that shot of him aiming his gun towards the camera and firing it is one of the things I remember from the film itself. It's a little moment, but like the dissonance, but also joy of seeing what he looks like holding like a big gun. And that's something I also want to look at with Mad Max is the world has to operate without guns, but guns do exist, but they're a commodity, like Max has his gun, but it doesn't actually work throughout the movie.
Someone thanks Max with like a reward of a few bullets, I think it was. Yeah.
A few shells, and then that comes in handy. And the one time he really gets to fire off a major round was a headshot and a juicy, bloody, nice headshot, and you're like, yeah, because he's had this gun the whole movie, but he hasn't had the chance to shoot it because he didn't.
That's why he was driving, right?
Yeah. That's why he was driving the big truck, and he shoots the thing, and then the car gets like trapped underneath the truck, and it's just this whole ordeal. But so when people do use guns, it means something because everyone's using arrows and spears and knives and all of these other little interesting weapons and contraptions like the boomerang, but guns are like a big deal. And so I liked when Lord Humongous grabbed out his gun, like it was a special thing too, like he had it in a nice little case and he opened it, and that says a lot about his character too. Like he has a nice little case for his nice little gun, and he has it put away, and he opens it very gingerly, opens it and takes it out, and he's like, this, but he's Lord Humongous. Were you expecting him to be nothing but a bloodthirsty, slobbering beast of a man? But instead he's got like such weird little choices to add to him that make him memorable. People love him a lot as I think for a while he was the favorite Mad Max foe, because he's also in the favorite Mad Max movie. A lot of people like a Morton Joe now, because Morton Joe does have some really, really fucking excellent moments too. I still prefer Toe Cutter. I just liked his Shakespearean qualities and how much of a relationship he has with Max in that first movie, and how, the back and forth between those. I also like that actor a lot. But let's talk about action. This is what it is, an action film. How did you feel about it overall?
Yeah, it was decent, gripping action. It was nice when it happened. Again, much like the dialogue, it's spaced out. You do have, talky scenes, and then you have action scenes. Didn't want just one or the other to be the whole thing. Like, as much as I do remember, I did like Dead End Driving. It was, a bit more on the talky side. Maybe towards the end, you had, car stunts going on.
Right.
And I guess, trying to remember the first Mad Max, it was also a little bit more on the talky side.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since for a lot of it, we are following, the other cops, like Goose and all that.
Mm. And they get more ambitious with what they can do with cars in this. And there is that thing where it's real. It's real. You know that they had to really flip that truck over, and that car really did explode in front of your eyes. You know that these physical things were really happening. So it does add a layer of tension to your viewing, because it's like, this was real. These people were really flipping these cars over.
Yeah, I remember, I think towards the end of our discussion of the first Mad Max, we were talking about, the scene towards the end of the film where, Toe Cutter's gang were, pole vaulting onto, a tanker, and, they were methodical about how they were siphoning gas from it. And that also does feel like something in this film that was stepped up. Like I said before, that, the gang is very methodical, and it gives them this almost human side where they're not doing, a performance. So it feels a bit more threatening in that regard. And like you said, the stunts are, turned up to 10 in this film. It definitely does feel like George Miller's moving towards what he wanted to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of you grit your teeth at the stunts, because it's again, real people really out there doing stuff. And if you read the behind the scenes information, you grit them even more, knowing that people nearly died making this.
Yeah, wasn't there a shot in this film where some guy genuinely got into an accident, and they used it because it was too good?
It's a big shot too. So it's this moment somewhere in the truck chase, I do believe, where this guy's on top of one of the cars, and it he flies through the air, but the stuntman's feet hit the car that was on the ground, so he did a massive pinwheel in the air.
Ooh.
That shot. Yeah, and he broke his leg in a million different places and nearly died, and it was really horrible, but you gotta use that shot. You gotta use the shot where the stuntman's... So if you watch that scene again, you see the stuntman's feet hit the bottom of his feet, hit the thing, and it makes him spin forward and do this massive pinwheel in the air, and he lands, and you just go, oh my God. And,
I'll definitely check that out after this episode.
Yeah, it is pretty brutal. The truck that flips over at the end, I think they said, because this was like one of the biggest stunts of all time back then. I mean, remember, it was only like a decade or just less that the French Connection came out, which had like the most elaborate car chases ever at that period of time, where you have this big tanker truck flip over and do all the stuff, and they had to tell the driver of the stunt person like not to eat for 12 hours beforehand in case they had to go to surgery. And we said this in the first one, George Miller has experience in emergency rooms and all of that, having worked there in his past, so he's very actively minded about like injuries and stunts. I mean, that's the genesis of the Mad Max thing, of like him seeing so many car injuries and accidents and wounds and things. And he's like, can I do these in a movie, but make it like cool? That's
always fun in a thing where you have like the creator of this entertainment product, had a specific type of experience from a previous line of work. Like, I used to be an undertaker, so I had this mentality going into this.
Right?
Yeah.
It is awesome. I love the stunt work in this, and the action is very brutal. Lots of quick cuts, but you see everything. I love also, like, it's serious, but also it's a little bit more fun. Like, fun as in funny. I thought you would enjoy the truck chase where they're going around and they're doing all of this, and and then you have just the gyrocopter guy flying around just throwing shit at them from above. It feels very, very silly, but also very fun.
It's like the most minimalistic helicopter you could possibly have. Yeah.
But they have a really hard time getting him down from there because they're not equipped for air battle. so it's really fun. Or like earlier in the movie when he threw his snake at one of them from above. And the person's like, what the fuck? And then they shoot the driver with the arrows, and then the driver just crashes. It's like, oh no, the snake didn't make it. Oh well. He's going to eat that snake.
Chekhov's snake.
It was Chekhov's snake. They did really set up the snake. He thought about, I like when they went back to the gyrocopter and the snake had bitten somebody in the interim of time they were gone. And he's like, oh, I knew that snake was a good investment. Like, and they just start robbing this dead body.
Then he had a whole speech to the dog about the snake. It's not his.
Yeah. Love that. No, I adore the action where it just unabashedly, and this is something, we understand is different nowadays with how action-centric action movies can be, like Fury Road being, quote-unquote, a chase for the entire runtime. That's not true. He does stop and turn around in Mad Max Fury Road. But back then, it was like, wow, they gave you the goods. The last 13-14 minute section of just the truck chase. That's just like 13-14 minutes of the film. And like in this era of cinema, that's like they gave you the goods. It's like 13-14 minutes of uninterrupted high octane real action with real people and real cars and real fire and real arrow. Like,
this is 1981, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I didn't think about that when I was watching, but you're right. That is quite a big thing.
You don't get cheated out. You go, I buy a ticket for the action movie, and it's like 13-14 minutes of unstopped, like uninterrupted action car stuff. And there's other action in the movie too. It's just awesome. Like, even today, I still look at it and go, that's so fucking awesome. Like, all of the good guys die in horrible ways and like unromantic, unheroic ways. Like, the warrior lady, she just gets shot with arrows and then she just slumps over, and the guy like is trying to heave her body off, and the bad guy's like, come here.
They're like a tug of war with her body.
And then they just grab him and 2 for 1. They go under the wheels and it's just gone. Or the guy gets the grapple hook stuck on his leg and he's like, ah, and then the car that had the grapple hook, they've been killed, and now it's just like flipping around and then just like rips the whole back of the thing off, and the guy just falls and explodes, and it's just Or the leader, come on Furrow kid, jump in the car with me, we'll live, and then he just gets harpooned in the back and he just slumps in his car and just like it minorly drives off. It's just so brutal. I love that. I love that about the movies of Mad Max universe, where violence is just this blunt force thing where in a way it kind of induces a little bit of laughter in me, where just sometimes it is just a little funny that even the good guys, they just get whacked in really blunt, unromantic, unheroic, un-Hollywood fashion. There is no swooping music and people crying or being like, she did it. She sacrificed herself for the noble purpose. It's just like, no, they just didn't make it.
Yeah, I remember like I think we can describe it like the climax of the second act where Max had left the settlement and Wes, knocks his car over, kills his dog. When Max crashed and he was like really bloody and it was like, oh, the hero's been really injured, and then the guys come down to the car and they can't find the body there. It did give me this idea of like what's Max got up his sleeve? The Hollywood hero, what's he gonna do? But no, he is legitimately like fucked at this point. He managed to get behind the rock, but he does not have a plan up his sleeve.
He was lucky that his little device still worked.
Yeah, like if anything, like the thing that he prepared ahead of time happened to work in this case.
It was happenstance, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think about Max having companions? Because that is a new thing in this. He has the dog and he has the gyrocopter captain.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that?
I thought, yeah, it was fun at times. Like the gyrocopter guy is obviously a bit more of a comedic character.
Do you remember lingerie? That was a question he asked, and I really like that.
Nostalgic for common things like that. So you're saying this is it was a big thing in Fury Road too, wasn't it? There was like the bad guy who like he didn't turn good, but he was like with Max for a lot of it.
Yeah, and Furiosa.
Yeah.
Herself, she was a companion, even though she's technically the lead. This is like Max is kind of rarely the lead in his own movies. It's like this is more about these guys, but Max is here too.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be helpful.
I definitely did walk into the film knowing that, like, not even after the first Mad Max, Max is always kind of, a supporting element. You get a bit more development on, like, the other characters in the film. Like, we get a lot of, the settlement people talking about what they've been through, their dynamics with each other. So when I saw that, like, Max has companions, I wasn't really thinking of that as, like, a staple of the franchise or anything like that. It's just like, now he's, traveling with this guy.
Oh, but not even a staple of the franchise, but, like, what did you think of it in comparison to, like, the first movie where he is really alone through most of it? Like, he had his wife or girlfriend, but, like, when it was just Max doing Max stuff, he was basically on his own. He didn't have people helping him all that often. He would just drive on his own and fuck up bad guys by himself.
I mean, maybe at the end of the film after, like, his wife had died, but I seem to remember...
Once Goose was gone, he was just kind of on his own.
Well, no, because I remember he was, like, at that farmhouse with, like, the farmer lady and her weird son and things like that.
Yeah. I guess they count as companions.
It's like once he's, like, taking down Tokata, at that point, I think of him as alone. Once he has the jacket and the car.
Yeah, that's true.
Otherwise, in the first film, I do think of him as just being around other people. Like, Max, let me show you the car we bought, or... the scenes with Goose, the scenes with Fifi, the best character.
True. Well, was the best character. Now we have Dog, who is the greatest character. I love the dog. Many people love the dog. Everybody in the crew and production love the dog. The dog was awesome. Very handy. A very good boy. And one of my favorite movie dogs. I think it's one of the great movie dogs where the dog is just like, look at that little mutt. Look at that little man. And he's just so helpful and handy, and he has a personality. And I love the scene where they're driving after they've captured the gyrocopter guy and he's all tied up and the dog's holding on to the thing, and if the dog lets go of it, it'll shoot the gun in his face. And I love all of that. And it's a perfect dog to be his companion as well. Like the right breed. It just looks like just old enough, like it's kind of gray looking in places and just kind of rough and around the edges like Max. But I love that dog, and obviously I love the gyrocopter guy. He's one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. I love the camaraderie between him and Max, where he's my favorite type, where he's a little worm of a man who is outsmarted and like through sheer force of the protagonist thrust into being the helpful second, and then through happenstances of the story, he actually becomes like a genuinely better person and is motivated to do the right thing and actually has dreams and desires to do things when at the beginning all he wanted to do was lay in the dirt and jump up and rob people. He was happy doing that. That's all he wanted to do.
And he wanted this snake.
And he wanted to eat the snake after a certain point. He was looking forward to eating it. I like him a lot. Did you have much on him that you wanted to say? Because he's a big component of the film.
Nothing all that new, I guess. But yeah, he was a lot of fun. He's I mentioned before, the villains, they've got the crazy hoon-ness to them. But this guy, he felt a bit more, I guess, sincere in his craziness. And so that made it a bit fun that he was also, a supporting hero.
And did you expect him to live?
And
get the ending he does, where he becomes the new leader.
Yeah, I guess. What was I thinking of him? I guess I could have, believed it one way or the other, but I was surprised that he lived especially after his helicopter crashed.
Yeah.
Or his gyrocopter, sorry.
He got shot down. But I love how he's just riding around in it like it's a car, just like driving around. Like, hey, Max.
It had wheels on it, so.
I love that. Hey, Max. I loved when Max was stuck in the compound. The entire time I was like, what's happening with the guy up there, though? With the gyro guy, is he okay? And when Max gets out of there and he comes up and he's gone, he's like, where the fuck did he go? And then we have the dissolve into the desert just with the drag marks, and you just see he just ripped that stump or whatever it is, and he's dragging it along with him. And then the dog barking at him, and just his reaction of like, no, please no.
It's all right. He got to think about lingerie after that.
But I enjoy him very much. He's one of my favorite characters in the entire run. I like Bruce Spence is an Australian legend. He's been in like 100+ things in his career. He was in this, obviously, which I mean, you could just rest easy if you were in Mad Max 2 because it's like, well, here you go. But he was in the Matrix movies. He was in I think the sequels for those. I can't remember what he played, but he was in Star Wars Phantom Menace.
Okay.
He played I don't know what the race is, but he looks like a Nosferatu looking guy, like big white head with like these red stripes up them, and he kind of looks like a vampire. And I know that in the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show, they got that alien design for one of the Grand Inquisitors, and they made him just look like a big fat soccer ball head, like that alien race. They changed it for some reason. People were really upset. So like they look cool in the animated series, and they looked cool in the prequels. Why did you change this? And Disney's like, fuck you.
What part of the film were they in for Phantom Menace?
Oh, I cannot remember. I just saw the visual of them. He has like this big red cloak on where the brim of like the back of the collar goes like up to the top of their head. And he has like these wrinkles that go like from vertically upwards. I'm sure I'll show you a photo. And obviously he has big teeth, which Bruce Spence has recognizable teeth and gums. And he was in the extended cut of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. He was the voice of Sauron, the Black Lieutenant, who quite visually recognizable if you know anything about Lord of the Rings. He's like one of the ghoulish guys at the gate of in that, and he speaks with Sauron's voice, and he's just all teeth. Like you don't see, like, he has this helmet on where you don't see his eyes. All you see is just like these deformed big teeth, and he's just like the smuggest motherfucker where he's just like smugly telling them to go fuck themselves and they can't do anything, and it's all teeth acting. Okay. And it's like, who do you get to do teeth acting when you're Peter Jackson and you're working with Australian and New Zealand actors?
Yes.
Bruce Spence.
Yeah, George Clooney's too far away.
George Clooney's too far away. And he was in Double the Fist. We did this on the podcast. He was in the second season. He was the mayor of the city that they were dealing with, and then he sent like council people after them. If you haven't seen Double the Fist, this all is gibberish to you. But there's a whole episode where they have to deal with like council workers coming at their base and attacking them, and the council, and it's very silly. That was actually one we liked, where they had a siege episode against the council workers, and there was like different like bin men were vampires, and there's like all this crazy stuff. But I'm
mixing it up with the Miles Barlow cult episode.
But he was the one that had the vending machine, and he put coins in it, and the vending machine turned into the assassin lady.
That was a thing.
And I think the reveal is he was actually a lizard man, because get it, lizard people conspiracy was very popular in 2009.
Man, season 2 was weird.
Season 2 wasn't as good, was it?
No.
Oh well, but no, Bruce Spencer's a legend. He's been in a lot of great things, a lot of classic things, and I just adore him here. This is probably still my favorite. It's a lot of people's. He'll be in the third film, but as a completely different character.
I remember you were telling me about
continuity doesn't exist except for injuries. Like in the third film, Max's eye is fucked up like it was at the end of this. He has like a perforated pupil or something in the third film, so keep an eye out for that. And his silvery blonde streaks on the side of his head go bigger because he gets full mullet in the third one.
It was
he goes
the 80s.
Full 80s. He goes full 80s.
Doesn't it have like an iconic 80s song?
It's got Tina Turner.
Yeah, that's right.
She's the villainess, kind of, and she calls him Raggedy Man.
Does she wear BDSM clothes?
She wears sexy clothes, but I don't know if I could call it wholeheartedly BDSM. Okay. I don't know what to describe her outfit other than very 80s. So look forward to when we do Beyond Thunderdome at some point in the future. It does have some great stuff in it. I love Master Blaster, but we'll get to Master Blaster one day. Anything else you want to say about The Road Warrior? Music slapped. We'll just say that the music's great.
Yeah. In terms of the trivia and the behind the scenes, I found it very funny that, and you've gone against this trivia point, I think twice in this episode now. The Wes's companion, how we're calling him like the twink, his lover, and things like that, and the George Miller or someone else were insisting like, oh, no, he was like adopted son.
Sure, George.
The visual language did not give adopted son.
Sure, George. Sure. Nice try, George.
Yeah, I mean, you know people who are adopted sons, right? Were they being chained to their adopted father?
We weren't in the post-apocalypse when it was happening.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, that's all I've got. Are you recommending this? Are you interested in seeing more Mad Maxes after seeing this?
Yeah, I'm interested, especially since I've heard Beyond Thunderdome is kind of like, well, I mean, maybe the first one is the one that people,
No, many people don't like Beyond Thunderdome.
Yeah, but it's kind of, I guess, between the duology, it's the weird one. Oh, not the weird one, but like the odd one out.
It's the most Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
Big budget Hollywood blockbuster with stunt casting of someone like Tina Turner to give you a pop song on the album, on the soundtrack. And
right.
Mel Gibson is like a big star at this point, and you got like lots of weird, but it's still got like lots of weird George Miller-y things, and it leans more into like freaky body horror-y things or like deformities like how Fury Road did. So look forward to that.
Okay.
Talk about Fury Road just for a moment before wrapping this out, because I said we would. There are some ideas that you see here that will flourish, like the flamethrower gun. You see a lot of uses of the flamethrower guns in Mad Max Fury Road, where it obviously all culminates with the what's his name? The Doof Warrior, I think.
The guy with the guitar,
yeah,
right?
The guitar flamethrower, which it is as awesome as you think it is. If you haven't seen Fury Road, there's a guy with a guitar that's a flamethrower. We all know it. We all loved it, and it is excellent. Is it practical? No, but it was fun.
It's memorable for sure.
And it's memorable.
This is coming from someone who doesn't remember too much of the
film. It was a functioning guitar and flamethrower, so fuck it. Why not? Just let it be. There's stuff like that. There's the people chained to the cars. up front and all of that. I definitely think too that this one, in comparison to Mad Max, leaned into, as we said, the hoons, the bad guys, having a sense of community to an almost militia-like degree and almost religious-like degree, where Lord Humongous was seen as this savior figure for them, this leader of great men for them. And so you have that. Obviously, the big, huge bad guy with a mask is also a big deal in Fury Road, where you have the big, huge bad guy with the mask. So
Yeah.
you have a lot of like little elements here. Obviously, ramping up of the idea of driving a big truck full of something from point A to point B, and having bad guys chase you throughout the entire run, and them just fucking things up for you royally, and having to micromanage and deal and running around and shooting on the truck. You have a lot of that in Fury Road. That's basically the runtime of Fury Road, is maintaining the truck's safety as you go from place to place. And it's interesting, like, George Miller came back to Mad Max after like decades away from it and just cracked his knuckles and just said, I want to have another go. And he gave us one of the best films of that year for sure.
I think I made the joke already, but like he had his Happy Feet experience.
He had his
behind him.
Happy Feet money, and he was like, I want to use it for one last blowout at Mad Max if I can. And let's do Road Warrior again, but bigger.
Yes, he started with having a child in this film, then he made a child's film, then he made Fury Road.
And somewhere he did Babe. He did the Babe movies. I think he just directed the second one but produced the first one. So, And Witches of Eastwick somewhere as well was in the interim of
That's
that
right.
time.
Yeah.
Never forget he did Witches of Eastwick and had to work with producer John Peters. So let's not start with the John Peters talk again. So we are going to be doing listening people's recommendation and choice for the next one. And we have a list, and if you have not suggested a film to us, don't be afraid to. We take them and we add them into our list, and our list is actually running a little low. So if you want to chuck some more our way, make sure to do so. Email us at spitandpolished@gmail.com, or leave a comment on any of us on our social medias and we'll add it to the list. But currently we have one that's been sitting there for a while by our good friend, and I've never found out how he pronounced it because it's a YouTube name. Dr. Reshies or Dreyeshies. I don't know if we found out how it's supposed to be.
I think it was Dr. Rashes.
Dr. Rashesh. They recommended to us quite some time ago Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. And so that's been sitting
I remember
there.
the title was on there. I forgot that was one of his recommendations, or their recommendations.
Yes. It's one of those titles of like, this is the name of the film. This doesn't sound like a real movie.
What's the name again?
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
So it's a motorcycle and a guy from a cigarette company?
Yeah,
Okay.
isn't that fun?
Yeah.
I have no idea about this feature film. Here's something. Okay, I want to play this game with you now. So you've got the name of the movie.
Two brands in the title, yes.
What do you think we're going to watch? I've never done this. I don't think we've done this, really. What do you think we're going to get from this?
I mean,
I know.
I'm just picturing like a biker with a cigarette, so...
Do you think it will be a good follow-up to Mad Max 2?
I hope it's a Kevin Smith style film about a man with a motorcycle and a cigarette just pondering about life.
No, well,
I think I'm wrong, but I don't know.
it's from 1991.
Uh-huh.
And it's got everybody's favorite actor, Mickey Rourke,
Okay.
from Iron Man 2.
From Rumblefish.
Oh, really? From Rumblefish?
I'm pretty sure.
It's actually got a few people in it. Like, it's got
Okay.
fucking Gus from Breaking Bad and Stardust. So that's
I was going to
awesome.
say Stardust, wow.
Well, Bartek, it's got a motorcycle on the front and a cowboy hat.
And I'm sure it's I'm sure it's on all the streaming services and everyone's top 10 films list.
Of course. It's so. Oh, okay. It's Bartek. People have to turn to a life of crime because a friend's bar is up for foreclosure.
I thought you were going to say Friends Bartek.
Friends Bartek is up for foreclosure. Who's Friends Bartek?
Is it a biker bar
I got a follow
where you
up.
can smoke?
I got a follow up question for you to end our discussion on. This is actually for last episode where we talked about the Darjeeling Limited.
Mhm.
Follow up question: did you ever find out what your mum's relationship to this movie was? She never commented on her social media. I'm waiting.
I did ask her because we went out to dinner I think literally the night after. And when I told her the title, she just basically responded with like, "Oh yeah, I think I saw that." I'm like, "Yeah, we saw it together." I think she just gave like some sort of vague response of like, "Oh, I remember it being interesting, a bit different, but yeah, nothing too specific." I like told her
You
about.
can tell she didn't listen to the episode because she didn't leave a comment.
You're
You're letting me down. You're letting the listening people down. I'm really upset.
I asked her. I
inside.
asked her something like, well, no, I told her what I remembered of the history of like, I remember you were like making a big deal out of it, and then eventually it came out, and then we watched it. And she responded to that with like, yeah, and it wasn't really what I was expecting or something like that. But it clearly
didn't have enough musical numbers.
It's clearly like something that was just way in the back of her mind.
Well, bring it to the front. All right, that is it. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can email us. You can rate and review us. And make sure to subscribe and follow us on whatever podcatcher you use. We have a YouTube page where we put the videos up as well as some extra little bonus videos from time to time. And that is all I've got for you. Are you a fan of the phrase guzzling? This is the first one that had... Was this... The last movie didn't have guzzling as a word, did it? Or did it?
Not that I remember. I think the only time I ever heard the word before was you doing like a Lord Humongous impression. I was just like, oh, you're saying it weird.
Mm-hmm. Well, you a fan of it as a phrase? A little world-building Mad Max phrase?
It sounds funny, but I don't think I'd use it if I was in the world. I think I'd just say, oh yeah, petrol.
Oh, there you go.
Like, hey, Lord Humongous, it's just called petrol. Come on.
Please, Bartek, call it gasoline. And you're like, well, he did say please.
And then he like kind of chokes me, but like strokes my head. Call it gasoline.
And you're like, you're hurting me. And he just says, soz, soz.
Oh, well, I guess you did say sauce.
I did say soz, and then you just knock you, and then you knocked out.
You know it's the post-apocalyptic. Never mind. End the episode. End the episode. It's over.
I've never seen Bartek just want to end it because he's so defeated.
Alright, end the episode.
And I just leave.
Come on, you haven't ended the episode yet.